Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about not one, not two, but 3 eyeshadow dupes. I feel like dupes are a very divisive topic. Some people really like them and some people are extremely against them and think that it's just copying and stealing. I generally am pretty okay with dupes. In fact, I think they usually are a good thing. It tends to be that it's all the expensive brands coming up with the trends and then you just get the cheaper brands following suit. Obviously spoken about Revolution dupes quite a bit on my channel, but today we're trying a new brand, W7. Now W7 is a brand that I've been aware of for quite a few years. I've never actually tried them just because they're not in Boots, they're not in Superdrug, they tend to be more in TK Maxx, which normally they've been destroyed by the time I get to them, or they're in independent beauty stores which aren't maybe as accessible, so I never really had an occasion to try them out. I know that they've been doing dupes for a while. I think they've done most of the Naked palettes. I became aware of them when they did the Modern Renaissance dupe, and normally the inside is exactly the same as the original palettes, but they normally try to change things up a little bit on the outside. I'll show you the other palette that I bought by them. This is the Whatever palette. I would have no idea what this is duping. In fact, when I saw it on the Instagram, I had no idea. You open it up, right, straight away, Anastasia Riviera palette, but on the outside you'd have no idea. However, I kind of feel like W7 just decided they had enough of trying to pretend that they were doing anything other than a dupe. These are the Vivid Pressed Pigment palettes, and as soon as I saw them online it was pretty obvious what they were duping. They are dupes for the Huda Beauty Neon Obsessions palette. Is it Neon Obsessions? I don't actually know. There's no attempt at disguising it, there just isn't. The only difference in the packaging is that the Huda palettes have a mirror, so the lid isn't clear. I mean, the colours are in the same order. The writing's a bit different, but I think is the same colours, so I think W7 just gave up. I shared these to my Instagram and I've had mixed reactions from them. People either hate it or were quite excited about them. I have to admit, I was pretty excited about them. In fact, I pre-ordered them. I received them yesterday, which was Wednesday. That's how excited I really wanted them, because I actually wanted one of the Huda palettes over the summer. I think that's when they came out. They're £27 each and I was trying to save money, so I talked myself out of them. These ones are £6.95 each, or they actually sell them as a trio for £14.95 to save you a bit of money if you did want to get all of them. So obviously a lot more reasonable. Just from a cost perspective as well, according to Cult Beauty, the Huda palettes contain 10 grams. These ones contain 9, so you're not getting a lot less products. From a cost perspective, these are really good. So let's jump into some details. So we have 3 palettes. The first one is Punchy Pink, the second one is Outrageous Orange, and finally we have Glowin Green. Each one of the palettes contains 9 eyeshadows. We've got a mix of shimmers and mattes. On the back we have a little diagram which is color coded. Anything numbered 1 seems to be a matte, so you have a separate ingredient list for it at the top, and anything numbered with a 2 are the shimmers and they have their separate ingredient list. There is nothing on here to indicate that anything is not eye safe, even though this is a pressed pigment palette. So my guess is that this just isn't sold in the States, because that's normally why the symbol is there, due to different regulations. There is also nothing on here mentioning cruelty-free status. I've taken a look at their website and I can see on there that it says that they don't test on animals. They mention that there are some parts in the world where it's still a requirement to test on animals, and so whenever they come across that, they withdraw their sales activity in the territory concerned. So that must mean that they don't sell in China, but they don't have the Leaping Bunny symbol or anything on there. Yeah, that's about it for the information. It's quite limited. I think we're just going to jump into the swatches. So let's start off with Punchy Pink. The pans are a little bit small, so I feel like it's difficult for me to get my fingers in them with the length of my nails at the moment. So none of the shades have any names. So there's the first one here. Our next one is a shimmer, and then we have another matte. That's a pretty swatch, to be fair. That is quite a pretty swatch. I'm gonna do the second row next. So we have a beautiful matte pink. This is the only shimmer that I haven't used on my eyes. and then the darkest matte purple, which has just gone everywhere. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's loads of fallout over here. And then finally we have the last row. So we have a matte lilac, then we have a shimmer, and then a shimmering pink. So the mattes have swatched really, really well. The shimmers, is it because they're pressed pigments? They're quite transparent and they are quite chunky, and it just reminds me of the Mitchell palette. I feel like the shimmers in that are quite chunky, but they're definitely not transparent. Now that one's got a really light shimmer. There we go. If I turn my arm, you can see it. So that's what the pink one looks like, and that is the one that I've got on my eyes right now. I have a very strong feeling that those pinks are going to stain just because they're pressed pigments. So I'm now going to jump into, what's the name of it? Outrageous Orange. Probably the most exciting palette out of the three. I haven't got any base or anything. This is just on my arm. So first we have the matte yellow, which isn't a bad matte yellow. Then we have a shimmer. Ooh, oh, that looks nice. Still a little bit crumbly. I've got some fallout. These are nice. These are very nice. Then we have another shimmer. That one's got a bit more of that transparency, but still more pigmented than the one in the pink palette, I would say. Then a matte, and another one. A lot of fallout there again. That is gorgeous. That does look very similar to the one in the pink palette. I feel like the only difference is that maybe the one in the orange palette is a little bit warmer, but they're not that different from each other, and they've swatched pretty similarly and with the same amount of fallout. These mattes feel really, really silky when you put your finger in the palette. So we have another matte, again not as pigmented. Then another matte pink. The matte pinks are definitely the ones that are performing the best so far, and that yellow. And then a shimmery gold. Yeah, there's something about these shimmers that is just a bit transparent. They're not coming out as pigmented as I would expect them to, except for that orange, which I would say so far is my favourite swatch out of all the shimmers. It does look really nice. This one. I'm really excited to try this one out because look at that. So the last palette is the Glowy Green, and there's only 3 mattes in this palette, which from the way the swatches have gone so far kind of worries me. So let's start off with a matte green. It's a very light green, but that's very underwhelming. Then we have a shimmery yellow. That's pretty. That's one of the prettier ones so far. Then we have another matte green. I expected it to be brighter. I wonder how it will perform on the eyes. It's a little bit crumbly. I mean, it's a nice colour in the monitor, but it's not the most promising start to these palettes, is it? To be fair, it's probably the palette that I was the least excited about anyway, even in the original release. Next up, we have a whole row of shimmers. Again, like, I just feel like I expected a bit more. They're very glittery. They do remind me a bit of the more glittery shimmers in the Revolution Forever Flawless Allure. Let's try the last row. So we have another shimmer, then a matte, and then one last shimmer. I feel like this one's gonna need a glitter glue, definitely. They are pretty shimmers. Like, they've got a bit of a duochrome to them, some of them. This one, you can see it's got that blue reflect to it. My camera died while I was in the middle of talking, so I really hope I haven't moved too much. But yeah, there's a big difference in between the formula of this one at the top, that greeny yellowy one, and all of these other shimmers. They're quite see-through. The mattes are probably the most disappointing out of the 3 palettes. You never know, things could go better when I use it with a brush, so I think the best thing to do at this point is just to jump into the eyeshadow looks. Starting off with the Punchy Pink palette, and of course priming my eyes with the P. Louise base as always. The first colour I went into was the darkest purpley pink on a Zoeva 231 into my crease, and I was really impressed with how pigmented this shade was. It wasn't patchy in any way, and it built up really well over the base. Next up, I went into the bright pink on another Zoeva 231 to help blend that out. And again, this shade was really lovely and pigmented, and I had absolutely no issues blending the shades out together. There was no patchiness whatsoever. On the same brush, I carried on with the slightly more orangey pink, and again, just used that to blend the shades out. Again, this was another beautifully pigmented shade, and it blended out with the others really well. Then on a Sigma E36, I took the lightest Peachy Pink to finish blending all of the shades out. And again, sounding like a broken record here, but beautiful pigmentation and absolutely no issues with the blend. I went back in with a little bit more of the pink on my Zoeva 231 just to make sure it wasn't getting lost in the rest of the blend and to make sure I had a really nice gradient, and went back into my Sigma brush just to elongate the shape out a little bit. I cut my crease into a half cut crease off camera and used the purpley pink to soften up the edges, then used my other Zoeva 231 brush with no extra product to help blend that out. Onto the first shimmer shade, and I took the lightest one on a flat brush and started putting that on the inner corner of the eye. And I was having to really dig in, and I didn't feel like any colour was really coming off. I went in with my fingers instead to see if I could get better colour payoff, but I really don't feel like you can see anything much at all. Next up, I went into the medium pink shimmer, again starting off with a brush and then with my finger. I feel like I couldn't really see a difference in real life, but there definitely is one on camera, but overall not very much payoff. Finally, I went in with the neon pink shimmer, and this was definitely the most pigmented one of the lot. It was still a bit crumbly to use, so I did also go in with my fingers, and then I found that it added a lot of texture to my eyelid and actually made the skin look saggy, and I just blended it into the other shades. For my lower lash line, I went back into the matte pink. I did to blend that out with my Sigma E36 and the lightest purple, just so that I could get some use out of all the matte shades in the palette. I did get quite a lot of fallout, so I cleaned up my under eye with concealer and then softened up the edges with my Morphe M330. I added the NYX liner in Crushing It to my waterline, as well as a wing and the Collection Glam Crystals in Cosmic Stars, before finishing the rest of my face for the final look. On to Outrageous Orange now, and just before going into the look, I just wanted to show you the staining that I had from using the pink palette. I primed my eyes with the P. Louise base and started off with the yellow on an iconic London brush, packing it on into the inner corner all the way up to the brow. This shade definitely took some building up, but once it was done, it was a really lovely yellow. Next to it on the lid, I went in with the orange and packed that on using a Revlon brush, and I did find that I struggled to blend the two shades in together a little bit. I felt like the colour lifted in between the two, which is something I have experienced with neon pigments in the past. On a Zoeva 231 brush, I went in with the lightest orange and started packing that on above the orange and blending it into the yellow. And I had no complaints with this colour, it blended out very well. Next up, on another Zoeva 231, I went in with the red and started packing that into the outer third of my crease and bringing it outwards and upwards. This was another really lovely shade, and it blended in really well with the orange that I used next to it. I went back and forth between the two shades just to make sure the blend was really seamless. Finally, on my Sigma E36, I went in with the pink just to finish blending that out and blend it into the orange again. This was possibly the least pigmented shade out of this palette, but it gave me absolutely no issues. Again, I used the P. Louise base off camera to cut my crease, but this time I did it on the outer half of my eye, and I used my Revlon brush and some more of the orange to soften up the edges. For the first shimmer, I went in with the yellow and started packing it on to the top of the cut crease, but again, this one was really crumbly and I was struggling to layer it up, so I decided to spray it with my Barry M matte setting spray. It definitely wasn't a massive difference, but it did make it a little bit easier to use. I cleaned up the edge with the P. Louise base and then went into the orange shimmer, and as you can see, this one was really crumbly. Just like the pink in the previous palette, it was definitely the most pigmented one of the lot, but again, it was just so crumbly and difficult to use, so I decided to spray my brush again just to make my life easier, and it definitely helped out, but didn't make a massive difference to how pigmented it was. I went back into my Revlon brush to blend the shimmer into the matte shade before adding some liner details off camera with my Suva Beauty Hydrate liners. I went back into the red on a small pencil brush and started packing it into my lower lash line, then going into the orange with my Sigma E36. And then with the same brush, the yellow, just to finish blending the lower lash line out. I I added the NYX liner in Mimosa Orange to my waterline, as well as the Revolution highlighter in Golden Lights to my inner corner. And here is the finished look. Finally, onto Glowin Green, and we have some brand new Zoeva 231 brushes that I picked up in the Beauty Bay sale. So I used one of them to start packing on the bright green in the palette, and this definitely went on a lot better than it swatched. I applied it all over my crease before remembering that I actually wanted to make this a halo eye and adding it into my inner and outer thirds. With another 231 brush, I went into the lightest green, and this one can only really be used for blending out. It probably is the least pigmented shade out of all the palettes. As there are no other green shades or no yellows in this palette, I had to bring this one up really, really high, and I also started pulling it outwards towards my temple. I then went back in with some of the brighter green just to bring that crease up a little bit higher. I carved out the spotlight off camera and decided to go in with the nude shade as a base for the shimmers. I did find it a little bit difficult to pack on, which may have been due to the brush I was using, which is normally what I use to pack on colours onto a cut crease or a halo. I then went in with some of the green again to try and blend the edges out. However, as these colours are opposites on the colour wheel, this was a really, really difficult task. I then used the NYX Glitter Primer as a base and went in with one of the lighter, peachier shimmer shades in the palette, and as you can see, it was extremely crumbly. This shade did require quite a bit of packing on, however, I think having the base shade underneath did help it appear more pigmented and a lot less transparent. I added some more glitter primer either side of the spotlight and went in with the blue-brown duochrome to add some more dimension to the spotlight. This one was also definitely nice and pigmented over the base. However, I don't think the shades really worked together at all. The shimmers blended in pretty well together, and I went in with more of the green to attempt to blend everything out. But as you can see at this point, I was really starting to regret this decision, as I didn't think the overall look worked at all. I packed on the bright green into my lower lash line and blended it out with the lighter green. And then to add more dimension to the look, I added some glitter glue again, and this time went in with the shimmering yellow. However, again, as you can see, the shade was very chunky and just got caught in my eyelashes, so it really didn't have the desired effect at all. To salvage the look, I added a winged liner and some little radioactive details and used the LA Girl eyeliner in Screaming on my waterline. Finally, I added the lightest shimmer in my inner corner, and that's it for the third and final look. Alright guys, that is it for the 3 looks. I hope you enjoyed all of them. So let's now jump into my thoughts on the palettes. So, I think I went in really wanting these palettes to be good. Like, I wanted these to be really good, cheap dupes for the Huda palettes. But I also kind of had low expectations. Like, I didn't really know what to expect from the W7 formula. The mattes really wowed me. They really did. I did not expect the bright green from this palette to be so bright when I tried it on earlier. The bright pinks completely blew me away. I did have some blending issues here and there, but I feel like that happens sometimes with neon pigments. But the mattes were really good. The shimmers, not so much. This is probably a personal preference thing. I don't think I like pressed pigment shimmers. Just going on the experiences I've had with them so far, thinking back to the Subculture palette, that is pressed pigments, the shimmers in there were awful. The Mitchell palette, I do recommend that. I do really like it. I get a lot of use out of it, but I struggle with those shimmers. Again, they're really flaky, they're really crumbly to use, but they are really pigmented, so I can kind of forgive it in there, and they only make up a quarter of the shades. The pressed pigments in this, I did not like at all. They were flaky, they were crumbly, they gave me really weird texture on the eyes after putting them on. That was fun. Then this one, That's 2/3 of the palette. I really don't know how much use I'm gonna get out of this one, guys. Like I said, this is definitely the color scheme that I was the least interested in out of the original palettes anyway, but I feel like I ended up coming up with a decent look. I wanted to give up halfway through. I don't like the shimmer colors. I don't like the shimmer consistency. I'm not gonna reach for this. If you are thinking of getting these, I would just skip out on this one entirely. Don't even bother getting the bundle. Just save yourself the £2 or £3, whatever it is, and just get those two. These two are really, really, really nice. The mattes really, again, wowed me so much. If I had to pick a favorite, I think this is probably the color scheme that I was most attracted to in the originals. I would also say that this one only has 3 shimmers. It did also have one of the nicest shimmers, which was that bright orange, even though it is hard to use because it's got 6 mattes. I think this is probably the best one. This one is also lovely though. If you want a really nice, compact, small pink palette, beware of the staining, obviously, but they're nice shades. You've got the pink, you've got the purple. It's just the case that this one has 4 shimmers, and I have a lot of pinks already, so I wonder how much I'm gonna reach for it. It's really hard to recommend it just because 4 of the shades in here are shimmers, and they do put me off. For the price, we've definitely had some palettes with better shimmers. Comparing it, for example, to the London's Calling palette, the shimmers in there, little bit flaky, but they're not pressed pigments. They're really, really good. Similar price, less shades, more shimmers, and I don't like them. I feel like my thoughts are getting a bit jumbled up, so I'm gonna wrap this up, but I think overall, out of the 3, the one that I would recommend the most is this one, just because it's got the least shimmers in there. Out of all the videos I've done with a palette that is a dupe for a high-end one, this is probably the one where I have most wished I had the real palettes with me, because I really wish I could compare the shimmer formula, because if they are pressed pigments and they are the same flaky, crumbly formula, I wouldn't bother maybe getting the Huda ones. I'd probably just get these ones, but based on that shimmer formula, if you only want one of them, it might just be worth getting yourself the real one, especially if you were after one of these two, just because they have more shimmers. But if you just want to get one of the W7 palettes to try them out, I think my recommendation would be this one, just again because it has the least shimmers. I didn't get along with them. I think this is probably the one that I would end up getting the most use out of. This would be a second. Don't bother with this one, honestly. I don't even know how much I'm going to reach for this one, if at all. I'm probably going to declutter it really, really quickly, so just save your coin on that one. Anyway guys, that is it for today's video. I really, really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely let me know what you thought of it in the comments and give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And of course, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the next video. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys!